All right, so thank you for coming to the Zorus product webinar. This is really meant to help us get in front of the MSP community, showcase what we're doing here at Zorus and how we're helping the MSP community with the security suite that we're bringing to market. So I want to first introduce myself and Kate, who's on here with me. So my name is Brett Cheloff, the CTO here at Zorus. I was one of the original developers for a product called LabTech out of Toledo, Ohio, which ConnectWise acquired back in 2010. I ran that for quite some time. Recently left last year to join this opportunity at Zorus to make what I think is something pretty amazing. And in my whole career, I've always dreamed of making automation into a form that enabled technicians to have an easier day-to-day job, and that was what drove my passion with ConnectWise Automate, aka LabTech. And I'm accompanied by Kate, who will introduce herself. I've worked with her for quite some time now. Kate, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Kate Trojanowski, and I'm the Director of Product Management here at Zorus. I've worked mostly behind the scenes in the larger part of my career, really operationalizing product and engineering teams to build the right things and to bring that value quicker. So been working with Brett in the ConnectWise Lab Tech days for, man, we're getting up there. We're getting close to a decade as time keeps going, and came to join Zorus and switched to the more forward product role, to really get into the driver's seat of what's the right things, what are our partners saying, what's the community and the marketplace saying. And it's been really exciting to be here and build Zorus and come up with these new features. And I'm really excited about where we're going, which all of that's going to kind of get touched on in this webinar. So welcome.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know us and don't know Zorus, I want to make sure that we touch on, who we are, what we do, and then get into, why we're here today, and also where are we going as a company. And the reason I bring that up is I feel like the channel, there's so much private equity money coming in and all these things. And what made the channel and the MSP community so unique with the vendor space is how much the vendors were involved with MSPs to really guide the roadmap in what helps their businesses grow. And I want to continue to carry that kind of motion into Zorus and how we operate with you and everybody else in the MSP community to listen to the feedback and make changes, and make all of your lives easier while servicing your customers, so all of you can make more money doing that. So let's jump in to our agenda. We're going to go over what is Zorus for those of you that are new here and don't know exactly what we do. We're going to tell you what we do. We're going to tell you why we're different, and then we're going to talk about ZNS, our network security that we just came to market with last week, and we're really excited about, and our use cases around that and how that's going to help you. And then we want to touch on our future. And then after that, we're going to go into a live Q&A, so you guys can ask us anything you want, and we'll go through that. So what is Zorus? Zorus, for those of you that don't know who we are the first line of defense for your customers. We are traditionally, up until this point, a device-only based software that helps filter all the internet traffic coming off of the device, whether that's thick client applications, whether that's web apps, doesn't matter. Any traffic that's coming off of the device, no matter what VPN it's behind, what router it's behind, if it's in a hotel or whatever, it doesn't matter. You need to keep the mobile customer safe. And that's what our mission has been from a threat intelligence perspective. Why are we different? So traditionally, in the market right now, products that you're used to and potentially might even be using or have used, change out your DNS server. I know everyone knows what the DNS server is. I always relate it to a phone book because nobody remembers phone numbers anymore. So if you think of it like a contact list, I'm trying to go to totalwine.com. I need to know what the IP address is because that's really what the connection is made out of. And those products will change out your DNS to filter anything that might be malicious, or from a content perspective, you just don't want them going to certain types of sites. You can filter it out there. This causes quite a bit of problems, though, when you're changing out DNS. In the sense of if you're at hotels or airports that require certain DNS settings or DNS resolution that it might not be able to translate, which causes some conflict when you're changing out DNS. But for the most part, we don't like to get in the way of the network, and that's how we are different. Our agent that gets installed doesn't change DNS at all. It doesn't touch the network. It actually prevents the connection from even happening before it gets out to the network by intercepting all traffic before it hits DNS. If we have deemed it safe, we will then allow that traffic. If we have deemed it as not safe, whether that's a security or malicious block or just a content filter block, it will get blocked locally and not allow that connection to be established. This prevents any kind of DNS issue at all. It doesn't matter what your DNS server is at this point. You can be anywhere with that device as long as we're on it. We are filtering that traffic, and that has been our MO for a very long time, which has given us kind of an upper edge on additional value props. Those additional value props are, you're probably used to DNS reports looking a little like this. Oh, hey, you hit this domain 100,000 times. And that means what to any of your customers? Like, a lot of your customers probably look at the reports you send them from this perspective, and this is probably more of a, hey, you had 5,000 blocks. We kept you safe. Okay, thanks. That's kind of your job. But what action item can you get out of this? Not a lot. It's just basically proving that you're providing a service, but it doesn't continue the conversation into something that I believe could be a much deeper conversation that you could have with your customers. What is that conversation? I think that conversation comes around time. So why we're really different from other DNS filters is the ability to say how long were they on those websites or thick client applications instead of just network hits. So 100,000 clicks or 100,000 domain hits on Facebook means one thing, which means nothing to most people. But if I told you it was 5 people spending 100 hours over the last month on Facebook, are you okay with that? Obviously, that's a negative use case of this. There's a lot of positive use cases of this in the sense of being able to say, okay, you're using HubSpot, you have 10 licenses, but in this case, as you can see in our screen, you only have 5 users in your company using HubSpot. So let's go ahead and lower your license count. We're going into I think everyone's position on the economy right now is up and down, but we're going into a sensitive economy that might be looking to help optimize their business from multiple aspects. And ultimately, time is money, and being able to turn those clicks into actual time is a value add from a MSP provider's perspective. So you can now come to your customers with a report that says, hey, this is how long and this is how many people are doing different activities within the business, again, the client or web client, and give those insights to help them grow and mature their business from an operational standpoint, licensing, education, so on. And that's where the true benefit comes in that you just simply can't get with other providers. I think that's the benefit of the business conversation that MSPs can have with their customers. But on the security side, with the same data, being able to say, hey, there was an incident at customer XYZ. It was at this time on this device, my EDR picked it up. What was the user doing at exactly that time? What were they looking at? Was it them? Our ability to give you the power to have the reporting necessary to say, this is exactly what the user was doing at that exact moment of time on that device. This is what they were doing 10 minutes prior to see if there's something that they did beforehand caused this to happen, or it was something else. And being able to say, yes, it was the user, no, it wasn't the user, from a legality standpoint, if something does come up, if a device was breached, if a user was compromised, or you just have a malicious user inside, a privileged access user inside the business that's doing something malicious as well. Being able to have the auditability of that and ensuring from any kind of legality standpoint, you have the data necessary to help your customer. That's also what you gain having this type of insight versus traditional just domain hits. So we can provide you with full URL context of the page that they are looking at, as well as the duration of time that they were on it and what they're actively looking at. But why are we here today? We understand that you're probably asking the question, great, love you guys, Zorus, you're awesome, but we don't always manage the devices that we need to protect on networks that we have to keep secure for our customers. And with that, I want to flip it over to Kate to give kind of our product announcement. Go ahead, Kate.
Yeah, so thanks, Brett. Of course, I'm a big advocate for the endpoint level. Changing your DNS causes all sorts of issues, especially if you're traveling. And it's not just Zorus believes that that's the better solution. I firsthand, I have the endpoint on my work computer, my personal computer, whether I'm traveling to the airport or in another country or at a coffee shop. My internet always works. There's no DNS resolution issues, or I have to flush things out with a command prompt or whatever the case may be, causing all kinds of problems. But like the slide says, you don't always have control of those devices. So when you don't, what do you do? And that's why we are introducing the network security layer to the market. Now, Brett just told you why we're different. Our endpoint solution does it before it ever leaves the machine. Our network level does it when it hits the DNS server. So just like the traditional DNS filtering, old school, that's how we have our solution set up as well. So this is now giving you that agentless filters to keep you protected for whether you can't deploy or you don't even know the device exists, right? People come into offices, they bring their cell phone, or you got, the Alexas hanging out, doing things you don't know about, and you don't always know that it's in that network. So this is now our solution combined with our endpoint solution to keep you safe end to end through Zorus. So what we're going to do next for this webinar is just walk you through the feature. It's really easy, set up, pretty simple and straightforward. This is our first out of the gate, so we'll be enhancing some other cool features that will make it more robust. But starting with configurations, you'll see this is our WANs page. With Zorus, we have a customer portal, partner portal that you come in and log into. Here, what we're seeing is I'm on that KO Kangaroo factory. So that's my personal laptop, Kate at home. So when Kate's at home, she's being filtered at the network level. You'll see I'm on a network tab. If I want to go ahead and add a new WAN, because I'm showing you how to do it, right? We'll click that add button. And it's as simple as, what do you want to call this? What's the public IP? What policy do you want to run on this network to keep them safe? And then we have some licensing bits of how many users are at this site. Guest Wi-Fi, we have a baseline coverage that defaults into this box, but if you're securing an actual network of full-time employees, you can up and down that number on demand. So it's really that simple. You put in the details, you click add. Our DNS Anycast resolvers are listed right at the top, so you don't have to go search for them. Anytime you're adding or editing a WAN, we put that up right in front, and then you just change your DNS server over to that Anycast network, and you're filtering. Generally want to release and renew the config when you do it, but It's easy peasy, right? So we have that in. And then if you ever need to come change it, all the buttons you need are here: edit, delete, disable. And we also made sure, if you do need to disable or delete something, we give you a prompt that just gives you that reminder of, hey, before you do this, make sure that you change your DNS settings back to whatever local resolver or the new resolver you're using, so you don't lose that access to the internet. So it's all very fluid, lightweight. Like I said, this is our first initial offering into the network space. We're going to beef this up with things like dynamic DNS and full content policy mapping in coming weeks and months. So last bit, you set up the network. You want to see what's going on with the network. So we of course have our logs. This has some quick filters so you can narrow down that date range, the actual IP WAN site that you're trying to look for, the filtering results. Maybe you want to see all WANs and you just want to find that block traffic easy. We have, the keys to export the data out to Excel if you need it, and everything's there, just nice and easy. So that's it. It's not tricky at all. Run ZNS.
You run, yeah, it is that simple. This does tie to your current Zorus policies. Assuming you're using Zorus. For those of you who aren't using Zorus, we're making it as simple as possible to be able to manage your customers, whether it's endpoint related or network related, and keeping them safe and secure. So, Kate, thank you, so much for, the update on our network filtering and, kind of giving that picture and ensuring we're providing full coverage for all of your customers. And I wanted to take a little bit of time to kind of talk about where is Zorus going as a company and as a product suite, because, a lot of companies might be called out for, maybe not innovating anymore and trying to help MSPs differentiate and be, kind of top notch when it comes to a security standpoint. And there's a lot of security tools out there now with the different, EDRs and XDRs and the threat lockers of the world, and there's just a lot of tools, and these things typically protect devices that have processes running that compromise the the network or the device or the data on the network or what have you. But what a lot of people aren't keeping safe is the human brain. And I think from an MSP's perspective, insider threat detection at your customers is a big risk at this point. Privileged users access that might not be doing things that they should be doing, or stealing data from the company, needs to be better when it comes to how we service the SMB community. And typical tools around behavioral analytics is very expensive, and typically in the enterprise space. So what can we do, right? So we have this filtering technology that's capable of effectively owning the internet on the device. We can see all traffic going in and out of that device and make sure that it's safe and secure. That's great. We also have this engagement data, which is the deeper inspection of what is the user doing. And with those two things combined, we can do something really cool and unique. And what is that? That's behavioral isolation, right? So imagine a world when we can sit there and say, hey, this person is not doing what they normally do. I'll just call out myself and say, hey, Brett looks like this throughout the day. And this is what they always do. And these are the sites they typically go to. This is the thick client applications they typically go to. And this is how they use those things. And through that behavioral norm, we can tell this person is acting normal. When it goes outside of that normal behavior, what can we do? Well, we also own the internet. so we can get to a place where we can say, hey, this person is either A, not Brett. Somebody is on this device that's, they left their computer on lock, which for those of you that see us at booth, we have our sticker. I'm not going to say what it says on the sticker, but, we have our sticker. This is lock your computer. And, it's very important to note, like, okay, somebody sat at the computer, they're doing things, they're trying to export data, whatever, or a privileged user starts going to pages that are sensitive inside applications. A lot of people will leave companies and try to take, let's say, the contact list out of their CRM. These things can now be detected by our platform as we go forward and as we mature. And because of that, we can acknowledge it and alert our MSP, you guys, to say, hey, we believe this person should be isolated. And then we can lock down their internet entirely and only open it up to your RMN tools so that you can get in remotely. Obviously, you never want to go on site, but this could be a delicate process. Initially, we want it to be it's probably going to be manual, but long term, we envision a world where we could acknowledge immediately that this is a high risk activity, and we're going to lock this computer up and say, hey, this needs to be addressed. The user is doing something malicious. We don't agree with this. There's also very cool applications here where we could even add on kind of like a two-factor authentication to data export screens that are very specific to that application. So imagine, for a CRM perspective, if your customer is using HubSpot and they go to the export companies or contacts kind of section and they're clicking on it and trying to do it, we could add a layer that says, hey, just like the unblock request, for those of you that know us, it gets the two-factor and says, hey, they can do this. They are allowed to export it. This is something we're trying to do for the business. They can take this data. Even though they're privileged users to be able to do it anyway, we still want a second eyes on it, just in case that person might have gone malicious. And this is something that I think is incredibly innovative that we'll be able to do because of this engagement data, because of the filtering data, blending those things together and giving you really a full coverage of a product suite and ability to help service your customers in so many different ways. And this is kind of like our vision picture of where we believe that we can take all of you in the future. Some of these things already exist with us, as you kind of saw on, at the beginning of this going through. But being able to do the anomaly alerting and lockdown behavior, being able to see, okay, what applications, whether they're SaaS apps, whether they're thick client applications that are being introduced to the environment. I come from an RMM background in the sense where, your RMM tells you what's installed, but your RMM's not telling you what's used. So just because it's installed doesn't mean that they're using it. We want to make sure they're using it. And a lot of things aren't even installed anymore. There are all these web apps. You have to have the visibility to see what's going on inside the environment, because there might be two-factor that you need to set up in different SaaS apps that they're running internally that you have no visibility to because you don't know what's going on inside that business. So shadow IT detection, data loss prevention, being able to say, hey, you should only be using, Microsoft OneDrive. You should not be using Google Drive. Let's, either lock that traffic down or create some kind of alerting on that behavior, and so on and so forth. License management, adaptive internet, so on. So that's us. That's what we've done. That's kind of the excitement around what is Zorus doing for the MSP community and what we just recently released with Zorus Network Security layer, which we're super proud about. And with all of that, I know that was kind of fast and furious over the last 25 minutes of content, but at this point, I would love to take any kind of Q&A live with Kate and I. You can ask us literally anything, whether you know us, you don't know us, doesn't matter. You want to say hi, put it in the chat. We'll answer it now, and from there we'll just see where the conversation takes us. Any last words from you, Kate? Last words, that's kind of a bad way to say that, but any
Yeah.
Final
Yeah, I was
thought?
gonna be a nerd and say it's not too fast and too furious. It's just fast.
Yeah. We're all family.
So bad.
We're all family. All right, let's see. Hi to you, Andy.
Hi.
We appreciate you. Again, thank you so much for your time today. We understand how valuable it is. So for you to spend the last 30 minutes with us is fantastic. Um,
And hopefully your calendar's still booked. You can just take a
yeah.
moment to breathe. We'll get you out here early.
Okay, so we did get a billing question from, the audience. So yeah, so we wanted to keep the billing very easy for the network filtering. So I'll go through it right now. So how are we doing this? So if you buy 500 endpoints, we want to treat it just like that. Like we want to make sure, obviously at the network layer, it's very difficult to say, well, how many devices are behind this router? Because you're just changing DNS. There's traffic coming through. Every single DNS query, obviously from an infrastructure standpoint on our side, is where our costs come in. So, but we want to make it very consumable by all of you so that you can continue the margins that you're used to when implementing a product like this. So there is no separate like, hey, I gotta buy WANs or I have to, or networks, or you don't have to do anything like that. You simply deploy a network. A base network will just simply consume 5 devices. This is assuming your stereotypical guest network that probably has devices coming in and out every day, whether that's, at a doctor's office or whatever that's connecting to the Wi-Fi of whoever you're supporting. That covers up to 1 million queries, which equates technically in our book, it equates to 6 devices, but we consume simply 5 agents for that network. Going forward, if it's going above 1 million, for every 150,000 queries above 1 million, it's just 1 extra device. We're not going to change that on you. We're going with the route of we trust you. We have it in the network setup to where you put how many devices you feel you're supporting behind that network, and we're going to play the honest game here. We will tell you how many queries are coming out of that network, and we could do the quick math, and it'll show it on the screen. But for the most part, we want you to be profitable doing this. We're not trying to suck you dry. So let's just play that game with each other and make sure that we're going. So whatever you pay per endpoint is effectively all you pay per endpoint behind a network. And now the variable here, and this comes up quite a bit, is okay, I've deployed agents. Like, what about when I deployed network? I think it's very important to note that the agents do not use DNS whatsoever. We are not a DNS resolver at the agent level. And if you're deploying agents and you're capable of deploying agents, we actually don't recommend you to deploy the network stuff because you don't need it. The agents are far superior than the network stuff. But to our exact point, we want to make sure that if there are networks that you can't deploy agents at, and or a blend, there's technically devices on networks that agents exist at that you can't cover with an agent, and you still want to filter that, then you would still do this network setup. So how we do that is you're actually getting 2 layers of security at that point. You're filtering at the device level, and even if that device leaves, you're still filtering when it's gone. And then you're filtering every bit of traffic on the network level. Right now, that could look like a dual cost. in the sense of, well, there's a query here and there's a query here, and I have an endpoint and I'm already getting consumed a license there. And now you're saying the 150,000 queries here. We're working on that model there to make sure that we're working towards the model to make sure that you're not being double billed. Are we there right now? No, we're not there right now. Right now, it's going to say, hey, there's probably 10 devices behind here, but this is also why we want to play the fair game where you're deciding how many devices are behind this network that you feel is fair, and we work with you on that in our account management team. Assuming you're a partner with us. If you're not a partner with us, that's the type of business we like to do. We like to work with you as much as possible. So that's how it works today. All right, going to some more questions. So is the network part hardware? It is not hardware. Well, I mean, it's hardware for us. We host the DNS resolver, and that's it. So in the case that you want to filter at the network layer, if you can't deploy the agents are not a DNS resolver. That is our value add and why we're different. We are not DNS resolver there. We're actually inspecting everything before it hits DNS. And then once it goes to DNS, it can use whatever DNS. This new product that we're bringing to market and that we've talked through today is the DNS resolver 100%. And you simply change the DNS for said network or device, right? I mean, technically, the laptop I'm using right now is using Zorus Network Security, and I've changed my DNS settings on this. I'm also running a Zorus agent on it. So it's both products at the same time, and I just simply change it to our DNS resolver, which is 7676.16.76 or 77. We have two, and that's an anycast IP that's located all around the globe. So you would change that at the router. You could change that at your domain controller's upstream DNS address. We prefer you to do it at the router or a domain controller DNS server aspect. If you're doing it at the individual device, at that point, if you're capable of changing the DNS at the individual device, we highly, highly, highly recommend just deploying an agent to it because you're going to get a better experience. So if we have 100 agents on the network, but we also want to have the network for IoT and additional devices, won't it go by 2 queries? Okay, so yeah. So I'll reread that just in case. So if we have 100 agents on a network, but we also want to have the network for IoT, additional devices, so on, won't we be billed or effectively, will that be 2 queries? That is absolutely 2 queries. So you have 100 agents deployed, and then there's all these other things. And then at the network, you're also filtering. You're still going to filter all the traffic. There's 2 layers of security at that point. But if those devices leave the network, they still get filtered. You don't need a VPN. You don't need any of that stuff. They leave, they're still being filtered. They go work from home, hybrid work environment, doesn't matter. Don't need to worry about any of that. They will be filtered the exact same way, but you will get double filtering. And this is where I'm talking about where we need to work with all of you on, in the sense of what we initially wanted to do, which isn't there yet, is thinking about an idea of where we can automatically detect that those devices are behind the same IP address, because we know your external IP address of each individual agent, and we would just subtract that count. That's not where we're at today. Our goal today for ZNS is to help you with networks that, like guest networks and different networks where you don't own the devices at all. You have no opportunity to deploy an agent. But in the very, very near future, we're going to be very flexible on this with you, in the sense where this is why we gave you complete control over how many endpoints behind that network. That's how many we're going to consume. So if you, create a WAN in our ZNS service, and you say there's 10 devices because you're trying to cover those 10 IoTs, even though there's 20 computers behind there, you can still put 10 in there today. And we're going to work with you on that. And that's part of the reason that to help us be flexible with all of you. Yes. So we would only do the honest say 10 IoT. Yes, yes. Yep. Ideally, you would change the DNS servers that your network firewall uses, not the firewall on the endpoint. Correct. You definitely want to use whatever is your edge device that goes out to the internet. You mentioned this doesn't support all sorts of features yet. I think you mentioned content. Yes. Okay. So, shout out to Ryan Caldwell for that. I'm glad that you met with him. He is amazing. Yeah. So it does not support all the features yet, right? You're not going to get engagement data. Why? Because at the DNS level, you don't know what device this was. This is an edge device that doesn't really have a lot of context other than just accepting the DNS request. So you're not going to see any kind of usage data for the user. You won't have user context. You will just be making sure that any device on the network, like a camera, let's say, is not talking to things it shouldn't. And that's what it's filtering out. It's only doing security filtering today. In the very near future, you will have full content filtering as well. And you will see feature parity over the next, month or two from that perspective. Kate, if you want to touch on that piece.
You pretty much covered it.
Maybe I was a little too aggressive.
No, the content filtering piece is not far to add. We wanted to get the security protection out first, and just get everybody in the system and figuring out any other kinks. So far it's been going really well. We've had partners that have immediately adopted it, which as a product manager, that's always super awesome to see. So it does the security filtering that keeps the network safe. It does the allow block list and the safe search settings, the content filtering and the GeoIP location, and then dynamic DNS are the things that are next in the pipeline. And like Brett said, a month or two, it's probably about a month. We're getting that into the engineering pipeline now. So that's a good range for that.
Yeah, and to call out the fact that we do, we're moving fast here to help innovate and create new features for the community. Kate's doing a focus group right after this, to help innovate and create additional value for our product. We encourage everyone that we work with to work with us and make something amazing for all of you. So we do move fast, things do change. Keeping up with our roadmap is important. Well, I'm going to do one last question, then we can jump off here. But so there's a question around, the network option is only DNS addresses. So is it safe to say that there's basically no network segmentation or stop lateral movement? That is true. There's no way for us to, like with the network option, to stop lateral movement. And technically with our agent, we can't really stop lateral movement where if something gets infected and tries to basically call out locally, we're not going to see that if they're avoiding DNS. We're also not going to see IP to IP traffic, right? So if they skip DNS altogether and the device has been infected, you're not going to see that. But the beauty of our agent is you will see if they're using an application that's doing that, you'll see that the user is doing these things with said applications if they are compromising devices. We're not monitoring every single process. We're only monitoring the active process. And again, one of those motions there was to effectively say, was this the machine and an infected machine that got hit, or was this a malicious user? And being able to identify that. And we're trying to do our best to identify when insider, whether it's a compromised user or a malicious user, we want to help you there. And that's it. Yeah, another shout out to Ryan. It's awesome. I'll take this last one. Let's keep it going. Off topic question. Curious. It doesn't answer here. When the browser install will be hidden and down without user innovation. So the browser install is define hidden. So just so everyone's aware, the browser install to get full URL context, because for those of you that know DNS is only the domain. It does not give you the exact full URL. The way that we get the full URL is through an extension that gets installed silently and is enabled by default and disabled from their ability, the user's ability to shut it off. So that's about as silent as we can get it. And why I say that is, and shout out to Lawrence Systems for helping us out, specifically Kyle. I don't know if you're still on here. I thought I saw you on here. That was a huge value add for us here at Zorus to be able to deploy in such a fashion to keep that there. And yeah, so it is silent. I have it on my machine right now. I can show you what that looks like. If I'm just going to assume this, I didn't just share PowerPoint or whatever, but here it is right here, MSP engagement. We call it MSP engagement to keep your customers knowing like this is you. And, a lot of users would be like, what is this engagement thing? Like, that's scary. It's pointing back to the MSP so that your customers don't really get worried. The employees start getting worried, but this is what's pulling your URLs. This is completely disabled. There's no way to turn this thing off, as you can see. Even me, who works here, I can't turn this thing off. But again, shout out to Lawrence Systems and Kyle for helping us innovate on that. We can install through RMM hidden, but shouldn't need it. Need to Zorus agent. Yeah, the Zorus agent is what's actually, so it's technically Chrome and Edge that's loading that extension in. We just place the values where we need to in the registry for Chrome and Edge to do that. And then it loads it in automatically. And our agent will detect that it's installed and they start talking to each other. So all you need out of the RMM, which we do integrate with RMMs to pull your customer list in and then deploy through a script, you basically just need to deploy our agent and that's it. There is no network configuration at all. Once you install, you're filtering immediately. By hidden, I mean with the install is not silent though. It pops up on the install per browser.
It doesn't anymore.
Yeah.
It just goes in.
Give it a try again. You shouldn't see it do that.
The browser extension doesn't do that unless you're on a very old version, because it is a later agent, but that was fixed in February, I think. I'd have to check, but it was this year. And I just did a reinstall the other day. It didn't pop any notice or anything in the browser, so you should be good there. Give it a whirl.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident and I think you'll be pretty happy with it. Okay. All right, well, that's it, everybody. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much. Again, we do quarterly roadmap updates as well, so keep an eye out for Zorus on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your time today.